The storm rolled across the Wyoming plains like a living creature, its roar echoing through the dark gullies and empty ridges as rancher Luke Marston pushed his exhausted Mustang through the rising gale, cursing under his breath and praying he could reach the ridge before the night turned violent. Luke had spent the last 12 years alone on Three Cross Ranch, a solitary figure whose life had been whittled down to cattle, fences, dust, and the memories of a family he had lost before he'd grown his first beard. The world had taught him early that love was fragile. People vanished, and truths hurt more than bullets. But nothing from his quiet, predictable life prepared him for the moment he spotted a lone figure stumbling across the storm-darkened grasslands. Small, cloaked, and swaying as though every gust of wind might push her into the dirt, Luke's instincts were carved from the old ways of the frontier. No one survived out here alone in a storm. So he rode toward her, calling out, but she didn't respond. Not until the lightning flashed and illuminated her face, pale, terrified, streaked with mud, and framed inside a hooded shawl that whipped around her like a tattered flag. Her arms clutched something wrapped tight in a dark cloth bundle, as if her life depended on holding it close. When Luke reached her and dismounted, she tried to run, but her legs buckled, and she dropped to her knees. "Please," she whispered with a voice so strained it cracked at the edges. "Please. Just help me get somewhere safe." Luke didn't hesitate. He scooped her up, bundle and all, and lifted her onto his horse. The storm hit full force as the ranch lights finally appeared over the hill in the distance, but they reached shelter before the worst struck. Inside his dimly lit cabin, the woman collapsed onto the wooden bench near the hearth, while Luke stoked the fire. Only when the warmth returned to her fingers did she speak her name, Mara. No last name, no origin, no reason for why she had been wandering the open prairie with nothing but a cloth-covered object pressed to her chest. And though Luke tried to be patient, curiosity gnawed at him more fiercely than the winter wolves that prowled the high plains. What was she carrying? Why did she tremble every time he looked at the cloth bundle? Why did she hold it as though she expected it to be stolen? Mara refused to explain anything. She avoided his questions, stared into the fire with eyes full of fear, and flinched every time the thunder cracked outside. But Luke saw something else, an exhaustion so deep it could swallow a person whole. He offered her stew, a blanket, and a place to sleep. Hours later, when the storm had softened and the fire had died down, Luke quietly checked the cabin. Mara had fallen asleep at the table, her head resting near the bundle wrapped in dark cloth. For a long time he simply watched her, wondering what kind of danger chased a woman across the plains with such desperation. But it wasn't until he reached down to lift her, just to move her somewhere more comfortable, that instinct made him brush the surface of the bundle with his fingertips. The cloth was old, older than anything he'd ever touched, coarse, weather-worn, stained with something dark and long-set, and beneath it he felt something solid, heavy, like carved stone or packed metal. The moment his fingers pressed against it, Mara's eyes snapped open and she grabbed his wrist. "Please, don't take the cloth off," she breathed, voice trembling with a fear so raw it made his heart jolt. "Don't touch it. Don't look at it. Please. Just don't." Her desperation wasn't dramatic. It was real, terrified, almost broken. Luke, who feared nothing, not storms, not outlaws, not loneliness, felt a chill slide down his spine. Her grip weakened, her eyelids fluttered, and she passed out again. Luke stepped back, shaken. What kind of object could make a woman beg like that? What kind of danger were they both in? He didn't sleep that night, not at all. He sat in the old rocking chair with his Winchester across his lap, staring at Mara and the ominous cloth-covered object she guarded even in sleep. And outside, somewhere beyond the thinning storm, he could swear he heard horses, many horses, circling the dark edges of his land. The morning sun split open the sky with orange fire, but the unease Luke felt never faded. If anything, daylight made the danger feel sharper. Mara awoke with a gasp, clutching the bundle as though she feared it would vanish. Before Luke could speak, she staggered to the window and peered out toward the foothills. "They're coming," she whispered. "They tracked me through the storm. They always do." Luke followed her gaze, and the sight turned his breath to stone. Silhouettes, riders, moving along the ridge, too disciplined to be wanderers and too silent to be ranch hands. He didn't recognize their shape or their signals, but Mara did. Her hands shook violently as she backed away from the window. You should have never helped me. They'll kill anyone who sees this. She clutched the cloth-wrapped object tighter, voice breaking. Please, Luke, promise me you won't unwrap it. Promise me. But Luke's patience had run out. He grabbed her shoulders, firm but steady. Mara, I can't help you if you won't tell me what's going on. Her eyes welled, her lips trembled. She opened her mouth to speak. But suddenly, gunshots cracked across the plains, splintering Luke's window. Mara screamed and dropped to the floor. Luke dragged her behind the heavy oak table, grabbed his rifle, and returned fire. More shots followed, echoing through the barnyard. He could see the riders clearly now, 5 masked men, dressed in black, trained, organized, spreading out in attack formation. They didn't yell, they didn't warn, they fired to kill. Luke took down one, then ducked as bullets tore through the porch beams. Mara sobbed into her hands, whispering over and over, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. When the shooting paused, Luke turned to her. Tell me what they want. Her voice cracked like splintering glass. Not me, the object. If they get it, the whole territory is in danger. I've been running for months. Every town I went to, people died. And if they take this, they'll burn everything in their path to keep it secret. Another bullet slammed into the cabin's doorframe. Luke's mind raced. What's under that cloth? Mara hesitated, shaking so violently she could barely breathe. A map, she whispered. Not just any map. The original claim map for the lost silver lines of Crown Valley. Whoever controls the mines controls the whole region. Land, rail, military supply routes, everything. This isn't about gold or silver, Luke. It's about power, enough to start a war. Luke stared at the bundle. A map? A piece of cloth? Something that simple? But Mara continued, her voice barely audible. It's not just a map. It's proof that the mines were stolen. Proof that the valley belongs to the tribes. Proof that could destroy every corrupt ranch baron from here to Montana. That's why they're hunting me. That's why everyone who tries to help me dies. The riders outside were preparing to rush the house. Luke could hear saddles creaking and boots hitting dirt. He looked at Mara one last time. If it's that important, why keep it covered? Mara swallowed hard. Because the symbols carved into the metal plate beneath it. They're not English. Not Spanish. Not any language the surveyors understood. Every person who's looked at it changed, got sick, shook uncontrollably. Some went blind. My father, he died touching it. She grabbed Luke's sleeve. Please, don't take the cloth off. But Luke wasn't afraid of curses or carvings or strange metals. He was afraid of the armed killers circling his home. And he had an idea, risky, reckless, but possibly their only chance. He lifted the bundle. Mara screamed and reached for it, but Luke stepped back. If the map is what they want, he said, then we'll use it. He didn't know what he meant yet. Until he realized the truth, if he exposed the map, the riders would stop shooting. They'd rush in, and that would give him a moment, just one, to strike first, to survive, to protect Mara. So before she could stop him, before he could talk himself out of it, he pulled the cloth away. The metal plate beneath gleamed with an eerie, impossible shine, like moonlight trapped inside stone. Strange symbols snaked across its surface like living scars, and the moment his eyes fell upon them, Luke's entire body seized. He dropped to his knees, his vision blurred, his hands shook violently. It felt like the symbols were moving, shifting, whispering in a language older than the mountains themselves. Mara grabbed him, sobbing, trying to pull the cloth back over it, but the door burst open at that exact moment, and the masked riders stormed inside. Luke, shaking uncontrollably, forced himself to lift his rifle. His muscles spasmed, his vision flickered, but he aimed anyway, and fired. Chaos exploded in the cabin. Mara tackled one attacker. Luke dropped another. The last two realized the metal plate was exposed and rushed toward it, but Luke, shaking so violently he could barely stand, threw himself between them and Mara. With a final surge of strength he didn't understand. He smashed the lantern against the cabin wall. Flames erupted instantly. Smoke billowed upward. The riders panicked. Mara dragged Luke out through the back as the cabin exploded into a storm of fire, swallowing the attackers and the cursed map in one blinding flash. Hours later, as ash drifted across the plains and the sun began to sink, Luke lay against a fence post, still trembling as though the symbols haunted his blood. Mara sat beside him, her eyes soft with gratitude. You saved me, she whispered. Luke exhaled shakily. Reckon we saved each other. She nodded, tears glimmering in the fading light. What you did today will change history. No one will ever use that map to hurt this land again. Luke didn't answer. He simply closed his eyes and breathed in the quiet, the first quiet he'd heard in days. Mara looked at him with a tired, hopeful smile. Luke, when all this settles, you should tell your story. People need to hear it. Luke chuckled weakly. Maybe one day,